What's up, everybody? Today we're going to show you how to break down, service, and reassemble the Daiwa BG20. We're going to get started with the spool. We'll take this drag knob off by just unscrewing it backwards. We're going to break down the drags on this, check them out, see if they're good. Do a little bit of cleanup on the bottom. Alright, so to get the drags out, we're going to take this little clip that's inside here, find one of the ends, which is here for this one, down inside the channel, push in and up, and just kind of work that around. Now you can pop these out, and we're going to double check those in a sec. Clean this up with probably some Q-tips, kind of like that. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, I'm just going to show you what I would do. And for the bottom part, I would add some oil right there in that section. Let's check these drags out and see if they're good. They all are good, so all I'm going to do with these is wipe them down, because they don't need to be greased or anything. So after I clean all these things up, I'll come back to you guys and show you how to put everything back together. Okay, so the first thing we'll start with is just oiling this bottom part here. Kind of work that in. You don't have to do this part here, but I like to clean out the excess. I think it's a little bit of OCD stuff. And for the drags, what we're going to do is take one of these Teflon drag washers, drop them in there, add one of these D washers right there, drop that in. Teflon washer, take one of the aired washers, which there's only one on this, drop that in so it fits into between those two little slots on the spool there. Final drag washer or Teflon drag washer, and then that that keyed metal washer on top. Now we're going to take our spring, angle one of the ends down inside the channel that you'll see inside the spool. Then take your finger and work the rest in. After you're done with that, kind of pop it up to make sure it's inside that channel, and you're good to go. For the drag knob, I'm just going to wipe it down. And then I'll clean out inside here. And if you're like me, you can also clean inside here as well, if any debris and dirt gets inside there. On this particularly, I like to use like a little spray, compressed air, to kind of push stuff out. Now we'll go to the rotor next and work on this the bail spring and the wire and the line rotor. To do that, we're going to remove the handle by going backwards or counterclockwise. We'll work on that in a sec. Undo those three screws around there. Let's lay them out there so you can see them. Hopefully this comes up, which it did. Always a good thing. And now we can remove this piece right here. Undo that screw that you see inside there. And in general, if these reels haven't been serviced in a while, that screw is usually always loose. In the larger size, like the 90, that screw can get so high that it'll catch against the drive gear and damage it. So it's always good to open that up and check the screw to make sure it's still flush with that block. All we're gonna do is pull this out. And we'll pull this out while we're here, since it's coming out anyhow. And we'll go back to the top part. I have a screw here that we're going to remove first. Then to remove that nut to get the rotor off, we're going to go counterclockwise to remove it. That was not hard at all. If I don't know a reel well, what I will do in general is kind of lay things out together. So you saw I put that block, the nut and the set screw together over there, and kind of put this in the same general area and had the body screws over here. Kind of know where a lot of these things go, so I don't really do that for these reels. Alright, so let's work on breaking this stuff down. I want to make sure it works. It does. Feels a little bit sluggish, but I don't think anything major. We're going to open up a bunch of screws here. We'll start with this side because this is probably the simpler side. Then we'll work over here in a sec. So I'm going to do that screw and this screw. And all we're doing essentially here is breaking this stuff down. I'm holding on to it just so it doesn't go popping somewhere. I'm going to gently lift this up. And there's a spring under there, so you have to be a little bit careful. I pushed down on that plate or that cover there to get the spring out of there. That spring looks a little worse for wear, but it's probably going to be alright. Pull that out. I'll keep everything kind of separate for now. And now we can go to this other side. Just screw here and there. We'll leave this one on first because there's a couple pieces under there, and we'll take this one off before that. Up. Now when I open this up, you'll see a bit of a intricate situation under here. We'll have one more screw to remove. I'll set that kind of right there so it stays in one place. Pop this up. Look at the orientation of this before you take it apart, just so you have an idea of how it goes back in. Notice that the dip in that that arm there is facing down towards this lever piece on the bottom. Under this lever there's a spring, so just be a little aware of that. I'll show you how to put everything back on when we put it back together. I'm going to pop it up, and there's a spring under there. Set that all over there. And last piece we have is the line roller. These get stuck quite often. This one is not, which is good. You have that screw there, a washer underneath it. You have the bail arm, line roller washer or collar, that line roller, and that feels a little bit stuck. I'm going to gently squeeze on this and try to rotate it. Yeah, it's working. There's a little bit of gunk under there, so that's kind of what I was holding in place. Alright, so I'm going to clean this up, and the way I'll do that is with paper towels that you saw me using earlier. I think for this reel that's probably about it. If I needed to break some stuff down, like let's say in here there was some built up grease or something, I would use something like Corrosion X to spray on it first. I may end up doing it with this anyhow because this feels a little stiff and it should be able to rotate. I think that's probably about it, and I may end up using some Q-tips. Alright, so come back to you guys in a sec after it's all cleaned up. Sure to put everything back together on the rotor assembly. Alright, so the first part we're going to work on will be the lever, that trip lever on the bottom, and these couple pieces over here. I'm going to add some grease to right around there, somewhere on this post, and some inside the hole as well. For the bottom part, I will add some grease towards the bottom here, but I prefer to use something like oil around it, kind of like that. So the way this is set up is you have this piece and that spring there. See that spring or not? The way it's going to line up on the bottom is kind of like that, looking just like that. There's a little bump or prong at the end here that's going to go through that hole that you see right there. So I'm going to drop it on. Try to just so you guys can see it. That may not work out. Kind of like that. Then we're going to take it, and that flat side right there, that prong on the end there, will be going through that little channel that's on the left side. So we're going to take this, kind of drop it over there like that, and I'm going to work that spring if I can find it. up over and inside that channel. And if that doesn't work, then you can always just put the spring on first and then work the trip arm on afterwards. Either way works. The only goal is to make sure that stays in that position and the that end of the spring is inside that channel right there. Okay, so after we have that lined up and functioning properly like it should, you can tell because it's springing back and forth, we're going to secure that with the screw, which would be this long one here. Keep my finger over it as I do this because I don't want it springing out on me. And that's set in place. Now all we're going to do is take this, kind of work it down so it stays in that position. Take our arm here, and remember I told you before that that arm, the dip is facing down, so it'll be looking kind of like this, or looking like that. Drop that over. Again, like I said, make sure it's on that side of the arm. You can let it go. It's not really going anywhere, but make sure that that arm stays on. Make sure this arm stays on this side of the on this lever. Now we're going to cover that up with this shorter screw here. And before you screw that down, you can always, you know, hold the cover down and just flick this to make sure it comes back on you, which this one does. All right, so let's go to the line roller. Yeah, let's go to the line roller. I'm gonna take some grease. You can use oil here if you want. I'm in South Florida. I like grease because we do a lot of saltwater fishing. Take our bushing. We're using the same bushing that we had on there before. Still works fine, which is good. Light amount of grease on the outside of it. Don't really need it on the outside part because we're going to put some grease inside the line roller itself as well. Can go on either way. So we're just going to drop that on like that. I'm going to kind of rotate it, make sure it's working properly so far. Light amount of grease inside this washer right here. Kind of put like a dab and then let it kind of work itself in. Take our bail arm. We can add some grease here if we wanted to, on this side and on this side. You are also able to add grease to the end of this line roller screw. I'm not going to do it. I think things just kind of transfer over and get on there anyhow. And now we take that line roller washer, stick it on looking like that. I'm just going to do a balancing act here and screw this back in place. And don't go all the way down, just where it can still kind of move around a little bit. Alright, so next step would be to add a little bit of grease around this post. Some inside the hole. Same for this one. And there's a little hole beneath that you want to put some grease in as well. For the spring itself, I don't always grease them. I'm not even sure why I don't. But I don't. I think in my head sometimes it feels like the grease is going to slow it down or something. I don't know. Anyhow, it is difficult to tell if one side is longer than the other. It kind of is. So whatever looks like the longer side to you, even if it's just your perception, face that one up towards the bail wire. So I'm going to drop that inside the hole, looking like that. I will add some grease to the tip of it. Wait for that to get frozen inside of the inside of this piece right here. A little bit of grease around that post, some around that hole, and some inside there where it's going to go over the post on the rotor. Now we can take this. I'm going to line this up with that hole right there, kind of like that. If I can find it while I'm doing this for you. Angle it slightly. Let's see if I can show you this one. Angle it slightly as you push down and over. Oops. Sorry. Angle it slightly kind of like that, as you push down and over that post. And trust me, it's more difficult doing it this way to show you than it is to actually do it. So it's not that hard. Now we can flip this over, and that's set in place. We're going to screw this in. Both these screws are the same size. I just kind of wanted to keep them separate for you so you can just see it. Now we can flip over here, and we'll cover that one up in a sec. Line this up so that we can get this working properly. At this point, I'm probably going to add a little bit of oil to right there and some inside there. Alright, now let's go ahead and cover this piece up. We're going to stick that in flat, kind of like that. If it doesn't go in all the way initially, what you can do is kind of like the spin fishers, work this bail wire until it drops in place, and then screw it in. And I'm probably going to also end up adding some oil right there as well. Now let's tighten the line roller down, and then we'll test this out, make sure it's working fine. For the line roller, I'm just going to feel it with my hand. We can see that it's working there. This is a rudimentary way of testing it because it doesn't work well. The best way to do it is just wrap some line around it and just kind of move it back and forth. That helps a lot. That works a lot better because it's like more of a real life process. Now we flip it, and that feels actually a lot better than it did before, so that's good. Alright, all I have left to do is add some grease kind of inside there around the bottom part and some on top. And that's it. Okay, now let's go ahead and lay these things out from the guts of the reel. Going to take our two bearings. Got a couple washers on here. Does the order really matter? How you put them back on? I don't really think so. Alright, all we have left to do is take this part off. We're going to pull this up just like that. Now we're going to take this screw, or unscrew this screw here. Be a little careful because you don't want to damage that prong that's on it. They go together. And then you can take this ratchet off. This usually gets stuck. This one is not, which is really good. And you have 3 screws here. I'll take this off. I'll take everything off for you. You have the 3 screws here that retain the pinion bearing. We're going to remove those. And I'll loosen this one up while I'm here. All these 3 screws are the same size. If you notice the orientation of that cover, you'll see how it looks, kind of like that, with that little notched end facing out in that direction if you're looking at it like this. And now we can pull this out. In general, these can get stuck or frozen inside there, so it's always good to, if you've never done it, to take this out so you can add some grease inside here to help protect it from freezing inside there. Now we'll take this off. I will keep this separate because I can't remember if the screw is different. It looks the same as this, but just in case, take that off. And now we can undo the screw in the bottom to get that eccentric lever out. This pops off. If it doesn't, you can use a screwdriver to kind of work it in. What happens in general, or usually, is that a lot of salt buildup gets inside there and just kind of seizes it up. And it looks like we have the same case for this one, so you get to see it. Alright, so if you notice, you can't really see that one actually, I don't think. There's some salt built up inside there, but there's even more salt built up around there. Push up If we're lucky, it comes out, and we are lucky because it's coming out. Pop that out. We get to a certain point where we can't push anymore, so we just pull. We're going to clean that off so it fits better inside there afterwards. The spring goes in from the bottom, so we take it out from the top, kind of like that. Pull that off. And we're going to double check the bearings to make sure they work. That feels fine. Fine. And fine. Alright, so same sort of deal for cleaning these things up. I'm going to use paper towels, the Q-tips. I've been using a brush. I don't know if I've told you, but if I told you guys about this or not. I use brush to kind of brush things off. Typically what I'll do is I'll clean inside here with the Q-tip, then brush off the outside or the teeth. And same day with the corrosion X to break stuff down if it's dried on there. Oh, one thing before I go. You'll notice that there's a thicker end on this. If you take this off, it'll be looking like that, not like that. And I'll show you that when we put it back together. I'll just kind of leave it off so you can see it. Alright, I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, so let's go ahead and add some grease to the two housing units. Not necessarily end all be all, because we might have to add some more along the way, but we'll get some main ones out of the way. Inside there where that bearing sits, around that post. Around that post. Inside that channel. Not too much, and that is definitely too much. So I'm going to work that in. Kind of like that. That looks good. That's it for that. Same thing on this side. We're going to add some grease to inside there where that bearing is going to go. Inside this channel where that block rides, that was a corresponding block over there, or channel for the block. Inside this hole right there, and this hole up here. While I'm here, I like to add some grease to the screw receiving holes as well, including this one where it doesn't receive a screw, but these things sit inside each other. Kind of like to use them as a seal, so to speak. And then this one, I'll put like a generous amount inside there because I can't get to the hole. Conversely, or in junction with, you could add grease to the screws. That's a much more effective way of doing it if you were trying to protect the screws from freezing inside there. But both will work. Grease there where that bearing sits. On here, I think it's right here, where that anti-reverse pawl will sit. And I'm going to probably thin that up with some oil at the end. That was a bit much. There for those screws around here, just because, and right there where that screw is going to go. We can also do inside here where that eccentric is going to go through, and on the bottom part as well. I think in general that's all I would do in terms of greasing. Alright, so next we'll just go ahead and oil these bearings. I'm using a different kind of oil today, which I will not show you, but in general what I use is Relax oil, or not show you on purpose because I'm doing a study with it. And some there. A couple of drops is all you really need. I like to put a little bit more than that because I feel like it kind of works in there, breaks some things up, and then you add a little more grease and it starts to smoothen it out a little bit. And this is especially true for the pinion bearing that I'm in my hand right now. Get off of there. Alright, so I'm going to add a little bit more to the pinion bearing. And now we're going to work on the eccentric first. We can do this afterwards, I think. Where are my pieces? I lost them. And then my spring. Okay, so for the eccentric, I'm going to add grease just all over it. And in general, I really don't do this. But whenever, I think it's more like a BG thing. These always have a tendency to kind of get a lot of corrosion on top of them. So I think this is because no one really takes it out. That's all. It's not because it's that bad, but it does get more than I think the pen would. Take the spring, go from the bottom up through it. And now we're just going to drop this in the hole looking like that. Going to get it inside the hole at the bottom. Leave it right there. Tilt this down, that spring down, to where it just kind of lines up with the hole there. Let's start over. Kind of like that. Then you're going to push down. Notice you'll get blocked at the top right there. We're going to turn that gently, push down, take our finger, hold or support this eccentric with the base, not this piece at the top. Then we're going to take our lever, rotate that onto where it fits, and then screw it in place as we continue holding the top. Now you can let it go, tighten it down, and just double check it to make sure it works. Leave it in the open position like that. Alright, so let's put this piece on and add a little bit of grease all around it. Drop it on looking just like that. Line it up with the hole for the screw, and then screw it in. That seems pretty straightforward. I'm going to snug it down. And then we can, at the end, also add some more grease to it just to make sure we got it. So now we're going to take one of the bearings, drop them in place just to have it in there. Notice I took the cap off. We're going to screw that back on at the end. And now we're going to work on the pinion stack. For the pinion, I'm just going to grease it. For these older reels, I kind of like to do a little bit more grease than I normally would for like the newer reels. And I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know, you get older, you want to have a little more security. So you want to make sure all those places in there are filled in. And who doesn't like a warm blanket of grease? Well, grease for gears. Blanket for us. At night when it's nice and cool. I do especially want to make sure I grease those threads at the top there. I'll just rub residual off from this. Same thing for the ratchet. But I will add some inside. And kind of same thing for this one. Now we'll take this piece and do the same thing that we did for the other ones. But we'll add a little bit of grease inside that channel right there where that spring will go. I'd rather just grease this, then greasing the spring. Light amount around all over here. I don't do the end part, but I mean, I'm sure you probably can. And I think that's all we need. Okay. So the first thing we're going to put on is the bearing and drop that in. That'll go down straight just like that. Make sure it sits flush and goes through the hole in the bottom there. Gonna line this up. And if you didn't remember how this went on, just gonna rotate it until it fits in place. That's it. It's not rocket science on that one. Notice I put them all in first before I snug them down with this screwdriver. Just a habit, but I think it's a safer way of going about it. Alright, now we can take this, put this back on there. I'm going to open that up kind of like that. Put one in around it and pull the other end over until it sits in place. Remember I said it fits like this. I'll show you why in a sec when I put that together. Now we're going to take this spacer, drop that on. It's keyed, so make sure it fits over the slot or the channel on the pinion gear. Take this piece, that'll sit looking like this. Key it over that spacer. And now we can take this piece, drop it on, and then screw it in. Remember I said I was going to thin this out with a little bit of grease? And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Alright, now the reason you want to put it in facing this way is because the leverage on this spring works in this direction. If you had it the other way, it would just kind of slip and slide as you went backwards, which is not the obviously intended function. So now we double check it to make sure it works, and it does. And we're going to stick our rotor on there. The rotor is keyed also, so you want to make sure that you have it lining up so you can get it through. And an easy way of doing it is to make sure that the anti-reverse is engaged, so that if you have to go back, it locks you up while you try to put that pinion gear through it. If you had it open, it just kind of flop over place, and it would be hard to do it that way. So leave it engaged. At this point, once you put it through, you can certainly open it up and not have it engaged though. Okay, so now we're going to take the lock nut screw is what I want to say, but just the nut. On this nut, you want to make sure that beveled end at the top there is at the top and the flat side is on the bottom. Kind of want to line that up with the hole, and that one looks good. And then we put the set screw in. That's good. Alright, so now what we have left are the block, this oscillation guide, and the main or drive gear. Start with the main gear first. I'm going to kind of lather a little bit as we go, like that. Then we'll come back around and work it in. And I'm doing it kind of lightly on this. Like I said, I do like a little more grease than other reels on these older reels. And that should work. And now we're going to coat the entire surface area of this. Especially the back side. We want to add some grease just around there where that guide is going to go, so it just kind of rides under smoothly. And then the final step will be to add some grease inside that channel right there where the handle is going to go. Now I can take my fingers in general, do that, kind of wipe it in, and some inside there. For the block, it's kind of the same thing. I'm just going to cover the surface area of it. I like to get inside there. But we're also going to grease the shaft, so some will transfer in there as well. Definitely get the bottom part and the top part. I think we're good. While we're here, let's go ahead and do this. I like to put some on top of there where that goes inside the block. But on here, I will also add a little bit on the shaft also, and some on the bottom and some on the top right there. And now we're just going to take the block, drop that in place, kind of looking like that. Take our drive gear, drop that in also. I'm going to have that bottom part kind of facing close towards there. Then we're going to take our shaft. That flat side will be facing up, looking like that. And now when you get down here, you're going to have to kind of work it together. So just hold on to the block as you push the shaft in. Kind of like that. Now we'll secure with the screw. I'll add a little bit of grease on top of it just to help protect it. Get it inside there. Now we can take this piece, that flat, or it's kind of like a smooth side, it feels smooth. That goes facing down, drop that on over it just like that. And now we'll take our washers, put those back on there, then stick our bearing on. Now I'm going to cover this up, kind of get a feel for it to make sure everything feels right. It looks okay so far. We'll squeeze both together and then just kind of turn it. And that feels good. It's a little bit sluggish, but that's expected. I have a little extra grease on there, so that kind of makes sense until it kind of works in. It'll be a little more sluggish than it might normally be, but that feels really good. All right, so let's go ahead and put this cap on and then screw this in, or the housing together. And I saved the handle for last because it felt a little stiff when I took it off, and I kind of wanted to show you what I would do with that to kind of work it free, if it's even possible, because sometimes it's not. So give me 1 second, let me get this screwed down, then we'll jump to the handle. Snug them down, just a half a turn, I'm sorry, a quarter turn or so, after you get them to the bottom is all you really need. Maybe a 1/8 of a turn actually, not even a quarter of a turn. All right, so that's together. Let's not forget this, we'll stick this on there. If it falls off, we'll put it back on. Now I did notice that this was a little stiff. What happens is you don't take the handle off, even if you wash it down, you just don't take it off. And it kind of just sits there in its own juices, right? And it corrodes and seizes up on you. So the way I try to combat that, or to remedy that, would be to push on the shaft itself, not on this plastic piece, because this will break. And so if it doesn't go down, oh, I thought it was gonna go. Let me screw it in there and see. If it doesn't go down, just leave it alone, because you're not gonna fix it, you're just gonna break it. And there's no replacement for this collar right here. All right, let's see. Yeah, here we go. There we go. That's exactly what I was looking for. Couldn't do it with my hand, but I was able to do it by screwing it back in, so that's good. So what you'll notice is sometimes what happens is once it comes out like that, there's so much salt and build up inside there, you can't push it back and forth freely. So I'll brush whatever came off, kind of brush it out of there so it's not impeding it in any way. Add some oil. I'm gonna use Corrosion X here for this one. And there. And now I'm going to screw it back in because I can't push it in with my hand. It's not going to work. screw it back in. It'll feel stiff when you get down to this section because it is stiff, but just keep turning and it'll put it back together. Essentially what you're doing is you're working that oil back and forth inside the collar right here. And this one actually looks like it worked the first time. Normally it takes a few tries. Yeah, this one worked the first time. That's good. Normally it takes a few tries for that to happen, but this one just worked right away. So that's good. A little more oil for good measure. Good stuff. All right, so I'm gonna open that up, take some grease, stick it inside here. And yeah, it'll be thinned out because of the oil that's on there as well, but that's fine. Around the base, around the threads where it goes inside the drive gear. And for the handle, I'll just add some oil right there. You can also, if your thing is small enough, you can add it inside here. If it's not, you just put some on there. Take something like a hook and just push it in. And now we just turn it in our hands. And that feels good. All right, let's screw this in, test the reel out, make sure everything works well, and have you on your way. That's something I want to wipe here. This. All right, so let's stick the spool on. That sounds really good. Take a little bit of grease, add it up to the top part. Stick the drag knob back on. We'll test the drag out first. Alright, that feels good. The anti-reverse is off. That feels good. It's engaged. Take the bail flip, try it out, that feels good as well. So everything functions properly on the reel and feels really good. Alright guys, if you found the video useful, please hit that thumbs up button. If you appreciate content like this, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. And don't forget the thumbs up. Did I say thumbs up already? I think I did. Alright, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks again for watching.